Picture this. It is a Sunday afternoon in America. The air is thick with the smell of barbecue, buffalo wings, and an intense, almost suffocating level of anxiety. Everyone in the room is wearing brightly colored jerseys featuring the names of millionaires they have never met and will never meet. They are screaming at a flat-screen television. Their heart rates are physically spiking. Their blood pressure is through the roof. Some of them are literally on the verge of tears because a complete stranger holding a piece of synthetic leather just failed to cross a painted white line on a field hundreds of miles away. And then, there is you. You are standing in the corner, holding a lukewarm beverage, desperately trying to calculate the exact social physics of when to nod, when to clap, and when to look mildly disappointed. When the room erupts into a massive cheer, you jump up a fraction of a second later, perfectly mimicking the facial expressions of the person next to you, just so you do not stand out as the weird one. You scan the room, watching these fully grown, rational adults completely lose their minds over a game, and a quiet, deeply isolating thought creeps into your head. What is wrong with me? Am I broken inside? Why do I feel absolutely zero emotional connection to this? Why does this massive cultural phenomenon, a multi-billion-dollar spectacle that dictates the mood of the entire country, feel as stimulating to me as watching a slow-loading computer screen? For years, you have probably internalized a very toxic narrative. People have told you that you are not a team player. They have implied that you lack loyalty, or worse, that you are just a fundamentally boring person who lacks the basic human capacity for passion and excitement. You have likely spent countless hours feeling like an alien dropped onto the wrong planet, wondering why you cannot just switch off your brain and enjoy the tribal roaring like everyone else. But what if I told you that every single piece of that narrative is a complete lie? What if your deep indifference to sports is not a personality defect, a flaw, or a sign of emotional emptiness, but rather a highly specialized, neurologically distinct trait? You are about to discover the exact biological and psychological reasons why your brain actively, and perhaps intelligently, rejects the sports delusion. We are going deeply into the neuroscience of your apathy. I am going to show you the hidden mechanisms of your dopamine receptors, the truth about intermittent reinforcement, and the ancient tribal instincts that your brain somehow managed to evolve past. We will uncover why the exact same psychological triggers that turn your friends and family into rabid, completely irrational fanatics simply bounce harmlessly off your prefrontal cortex. By the time we are done here, you will never feel the need to fake a high five or force a cheer at a Super Bowl party ever again. You will finally understand that your inability to obsess over sports is not a weakness, but a profound psychological shield. It is a biological safeguard, protecting your emotional energy, keeping your self-esteem entirely within your own control, and allowing you to direct your limited, precious capacity for empathy toward things that actually matter to your real life. You are not missing out. Your brain is just playing a completely different, much more self-directed game. Let us break down exactly how your mind works. Let us rewind to the fundamental architecture of human survival. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancient ancestors roamed the harsh savannas in small, tightly knit groups. Your survival as a human being was absolutely and entirely dependent on your tribe. If you were cast out, you died. If your tribe was attacked by predators or rival clans, and you did not fight violently alongside them, you died. Therefore, over millennia, evolution hardwired an incredibly powerful chemical reward system deeply into our mammalian brains to ensure we stay fiercely loyal to our in-group. When you belong to a group, when you act in unison with them, your brain floods your central nervous system with oxytocin. This is the exact same potent bonding hormone that a mother releases when holding her newborn baby. It makes you feel safe, loved, protected, and invincible. It creates a profound, almost intoxicating sense of biological unity. Now, fast forward to the modern world. We no longer have to hunt woolly mammoths. We no longer have to defend our caves from rival clans wielding sharpened sticks. We live in comfortable, climate-controlled houses and buy our processed food at brightly lit grocery stores. But that ancient, primal, tribal circuitry is still sitting right there in our brains, completely active, desperate for a target. It is an evolutionary hangover relentlessly looking for a fix. And then, along comes the multi-billion-dollar sports industry. Sports are the ultimate, socially acceptable, perfectly packaged, modern substitute for the tribe. They come complete with brightly colored matching uniforms, rhythmic shared chants, tribal face paint, and a clearly defined, heavily publicized enemy wearing a different color on the other side of the field. When a hardcore sports fanatic watches their team play, their brain is not processing it as a corporate entertainment product. Their ancient mammalian brain literally tricks them into believing that those highly paid athletes running on the grass are critical members of their personal survival clan. The oxytocin flows in massive waves. The tribal bond is fully activated. They feel a deep, chemical connection to a group of men who do not even know they exist. But this is exactly where your brain takes a completely different, almost rebellious path. This is the secret biological mechanism that sets you apart from the screaming masses. Psychologists and neuroscientists have found that people who simply cannot bring themselves to care about sports often exhibit what is known as lower tribal instincts. Your psychological identity is not rigidly tethered to a collective group in order to feel secure. You are fundamentally, on a neurological level, more individualistic. When you look at a sports team, your prefrontal cortex correctly processes objective reality. It sees a massive corporate franchise employing transient, highly paid independent contractors to entertain the masses and sell television advertisements. Your brain simply refuses to fire the ancient oxytocin survival alarm for a completely arbitrary geographical association. You look at the screen and think, why on earth should I link my emotional stability and my self-worth to the athletic performance of a 22-year-old millionaire who was just traded to this city 3 weeks ago? Your brain is highly logical, almost rigidly analytical in this specific context. A fascinating, heavily peer-reviewed study from 2019 actually quantified this phenomenon. Researchers discovered that people with low sports interest show significantly lower levels of automated us versus them thinking. You do not automatically hate the people wearing the blue shirts just because you happen to be standing in the section wearing the red shirts. Your brain does not easily fall into the primitive psychological trap of manufactured tribal hostility. You are essentially immune to artificial rivalries. But that is only the first layer of this psychological puzzle. What we are about to explore next is the darkest, most compelling reason why sports fans physically cannot look away from the screen and why your brain simply rejects the bait entirely. It all comes down to a specific neurotransmitter and a behavioral concept known as intermittent reinforcement. Imagine you are standing in a loud, flashing casino in Las Vegas. You pull the heavy metal lever on a slot machine. The colorful reels spin rapidly. Your heart races in your chest. Your breathing gets shallow. You do not know if you are going to win the massive jackpot or lose your hard-earned money. That tiny window of time, the agonizing, exhilarating, terrifying split second of not knowing the outcome, is when your brain releases a massive, overwhelming surge of dopamine. Most people misunderstand dopamine. Dopamine is not actually the chemical of pleasure or satisfaction. It is the chemical of intense anticipation. It is the raw biological fuel of craving. Now, look at a professional football game, a high-stakes basketball game, or a tense soccer match. Every single play, every pitch, every possession, every referee whistle is a pull of the casino slot machine lever. Will they score a touchdown? Will they fumble the ball? Will the referee make a controversial call? The fan sitting on the couch has absolutely zero physical control over the outcome, and that terrifying unpredictability is exactly what makes the experience so incredibly, fundamentally addictive. This is intermittent reinforcement at its finest. It is the most powerful, behaviorally addictive reward schedule known to modern psychology. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI brain scans, of passionate sports fans actively watching a high-stakes game show something truly wild. Their neural reward centers light up in the exact same blazing patterns as someone who is struggling with a severe gambling addiction. They are receiving constant, unpredictable microdoses of dopamine for 3 straight hours on a Sunday afternoon. They are quite literally getting high on the uncertainty of the broadcast. I used to sit in the corner at these Super Bowl parties, watching my friends completely lose their temper, screaming furiously at the television, throwing snack bowls across the room, letting a bad game entirely ruin their mood for the rest of the week. I would sit there in silence, completely calm, analyzing their frantic behavior, wondering why I felt absolutely nothing but a mild sense of boredom. The truth is, my brain, and your brain, simply does not process vicarious spectator competition as a valid or reliable source of dopamine. We are missing the biological vulnerability to this specific type of societal slot machine. And, incredibly, this might actually be hardwired into your physical DNA. Pioneering neurogenetic research from the University of Chicago has heavily suggested that microscopic genetic variations in our specific dopamine receptor genes can actually predict how much a person cares about competitive spectator activities. Let that profound fact sink in for a moment. Your absolute, unwavering indifference to whether the home team wins the national championship might not be a conscious choice or a personality quirk at all. It might be physically written into your genetic code before you were even born. Your specific dopamine systems are simply not triggered by watching other people achieve things on a screen. Your brain strictly demands direct, physical participation. Think of a sports fanatic's brain as a volatile dopamine slot machine, constantly, desperately looking for a quick, unpredictable hit from external, uncontrollable events. In stark contrast, your brain operates much more like a meticulously managed, long-term investment portfolio. You do not get a chemical rush from a random three-point shot made by a stranger. You require a completely different kind of neurological reward. You need deep meaning, authentic connection, or tangible personal progression. But the psychological divergence between you and the fans does not stop at dopamine receptors. There is an even deeper, slightly more disturbing phenomenon at play here, and it perfectly explains why sports fans can become so incredibly arrogant when their team is winning, and so deeply depressed and angry when their team loses. It is a well-documented concept in social psychology called basking in reflected glory, often abbreviated by researchers as BIRGing. Listen very carefully to the specific language a rabid sports fan uses the day after a big game. When their chosen team wins the championship, they throw their hands in the air, puff out their chest, and yell proudly, "We won. We are the champions. We played so incredibly well today." But pay close attention to what happens when their team suffers a humiliating defeat. Suddenly, the psychological pronoun shifts dramatically. They say, "They lost. The defense was terrible. The coach made a horrific CAL. They lost the game for us." They psychologically attach themselves to the victory to artificially inflate their own fragile ego, and they rapidly distance themselves from the defeat to protect their vulnerable self-esteem. They are literally outsourcing their personal sense of achievement and self-worth to complete strangers who perform physical tasks for money. People who have absolutely zero interest in sports rarely, if ever, engage in this kind of bizarre psychological outsourcing. Because your brain does not form that illusory tribal parasocial bond, you do not use external, completely uncontrollable events to regulate your own internal self-worth. Your self-concept is heavily grounded and much more stable. When you achieve something in life, it is because you actually put in the grueling work. When you fail, you take the painful responsibility and learn from it. You do not need to watch a group of grown men chasing a ball across a field to magically validate your existence on a Sunday afternoon. You possess what psychologists call a strong internal locus of control, whereas the fanatic often relies heavily on a chaotic external locus of control. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, if sports fans have all this intense tribal empathy for their team and their fellow fans, why do I feel so disconnected from humanity sometimes? Am I somehow lacking human empathy? Are my emotions broken? The answer from the scientific community is a definitive, resounding no. You are simply practicing an advanced psychological resource management strategy called empathy allocation. Every single human being on Earth has a finite, strictly limited capacity for deep emotional investment. You only have so many emotional calories to burn each day before you experience severe psychological burnout. Sports fans choose to spend a massive, disproportionate portion of their daily empathy budget on millionaire athletes, manufactured team narratives, and the endless soap opera drama of the athletic season. Because you absolutely refuse to spend your precious emotional currency on the National Football League or the English Premier League, you have a massive, untouched surplus of empathy and cognitive energy left over. A landmark psychological study published in 2021 actually proved this. The researchers found that individuals with remarkably low sports interest consistently score significantly higher in the core psychological personality trait known as openness to experience. They score vastly higher in the profound appreciation of complex art, natural beauty, and rigorous intellectual curiosity. Your brain is aggressively seeking the exact same peak feelings of human connection, transcendence, and awe that a sports fan desperately chases in a crowded, noisy stadium. But your brain simply refuses to settle for the cheap, manufactured, corporate-sponsored drama of a brightly lit scoreboard. You choose to invest your deep empathy into real, tangible relationships where there is actual, meaningful reciprocity. You invest your heavy cognitive energy into creative passion projects, fighting for social causes, learning difficult new skills, or trying to understand the incredibly complex human condition. You vastly prefer direct, messy engagement over safe, sterile, parasocial spectating. You deeply want to be the active player in the challenging game of your own life, rather than the passive spectator of someone else's highlight reel. And here is the final, most crucial piece of the psychological puzzle regarding your everyday experience. A truth that might hit incredibly close to home. For many highly intelligent, sensitive people, actively rejecting mainstream sports culture is actually a brilliant, subconscious, psychological defense mechanism. Perhaps you were always picked last in gym class when you were a vulnerable child. Perhaps you grew up in a harsh environment where aggressive, toxic competitiveness was constantly rewarded, and quiet, introverted thoughtfulness was heavily punished or mocked. Your developing brain keenly recognized that the entire environment of sports fandom is very often built on primitive dominance, physical aggression, and completely arbitrary social hierarchies. By permanently opting out of sports culture entirely, your brain is actively, fiercely protecting your inner peace. It is outright refusing to participate in a pointless dominance hierarchy that adds absolutely zero practical, tangible value to your daily human existence. Your subconscious mind is making a powerful statement. It is saying, I will absolutely not allow my emotional state, my happiness, or my blood pressure to be violently dictated by whether or not a synthetic leather ball crosses an arbitrary painted white line. This is the profound, undeniable truth of the immune brain. You are not a pretender desperately trying to fit in anymore. You finally understand the invisible machinery now. You see the flashing dopamine slot machine for exactly what it is, and you have simply chosen to walk out of the casino. So, what is the ultimate conclusion of all this complex neuroscience and evolutionary psychology? Let us completely reframe how you see yourself the next time you are forced to attend a loud, chaotic watch party. Your profound, unwavering indifference to the sports fanaticism around you is absolutely not a social deficit. It is not a sign that you are a boring person or that your emotional capacity is somehow stunted. In fact, it is the exact opposite. Your brain has successfully bypassed one of the most powerful, highly addictive, and deeply primitive psychological traps in modern human society. You are immune to the manufactured tribal hostility, the chaotic dopamine slot machine of unpredictable external events, and the bizarre psychological coping mechanism of basking in reflected glory. You possess a brain that rigidly demands direct, meaningful participation in life rather than passive, vicarious spectating. Your emotional energy, your precious capacity for deep empathy, and your vital cognitive focus are entirely conserved for real relationships, complex ideas, and the actual tangible progress of your own life. You are not wasting 3 brutal hours every single Sunday agonizing over a completely uncontrollable outcome performed by strangers on a television screen. You are fully present in your own reality. If you were truly honest with yourself right now, what incredible things could you achieve with all of that saved mental energy, while everyone else is screaming at a referee? If you found this breakdown of the sports immune brain fascinating, you absolutely need to subscribe right now. In the very next video, I am going to reveal the deeply disturbing, highly manipulative psychological tactics that massive corporations use to secretly manufacture your daily habits, and I promise you, you are falling for at least 3 of them right this second. You definitely do not want to miss that. I will see you there.